Hello, world. Good evening, Nissan Boulavinaka, and Namaste from Sydney, Australia. A very hot day here in Sydney, 35 degrees. Would you believe it? Welcome to a very special edition of Sashi Singh's Talking Point program. This is episode 51 on this very historical day insofar as Fiji's political landscape is concerned. However, before I continue tonight's program, an important announcement for one and all. Sashi Singh's Talking Point, SSTP, recognizes that questioning, constructive arguments, and opinions are part of conversation, but posts with aggressive personal attacks, profanity, name calling, swearing, defamatory in nature, and/or threatening will be removed immediately, and offenders will be blocked from being a part of the SSTP program. Let's observe these rules and let's all enjoy the program. Well, what a week it has been. What a day it has been. Many of you were wishing for Christmas, you wanted a new prime minister. Santa's brought you. Your wishes have come true. Fiji has a brand new prime minister. We'll talk about that in just a moment. And as I said, the tension, the drama of today, while the votes were being cast by secret ballot, as the votes were being tallied, it had everything. Somebody rang me and said, I can't take this. The stress is killing me. I'll have a heart attack if I'm not careful. Well, to join me this evening is none other than Professor Wadan Narsi. Before I introduce my good friend, Professor Narsi, let me also say to you, I have communicated with two members of the government side, and I hope to have both of them on air shortly to share their views, their thoughts, their feelings as they are in celebration mode this evening. And I won't name them for fear of embarrassing them if for some reason amidst the celebrations they're having, they forget to turn up or something else drives them away. So fingers crossed. As I said, I've spoken to two, and let's hope they both can make it tonight. That will be exciting. Well, time to join Professor Wadan Narsi. He knows his stuff, a former parliamentarian, an economics professor, and a lot to share. Wadan, welcome to SSTP again. What a day it has been. A day
Oh,
of drama, a day of tension. How did you handle it, my friend?
well, Bulla Saji, I mean, I must say you said it exactly as I would have. At one stage, I was thinking, oh my God, the results were so sort of at the beginning, it was clear, right? Fiji first had 26, People's Alliance and NFP had 26, Sodelpa, an opposition party, had three. And so we thought, oh, game over. Sodelpa, an opposition party, would join the other two and they would form government. But next thing we see actually is that there is, it's not as clear cut as that. And then they were beginning to have dialogues and things. The political parties were making presentations to Sodelpa. Sodelpa made a decision, and then somebody put a spoke in the wheel, and then they had another meeting, and another people were disqualified from entering the meeting. Oh, the
The
tension! I tell you what, somebody
so-called
could make a
anomalies,
somebody could make a
anomalies.
fantastic documentary out of all the drama that took place. But end of the day, thank goodness, right? Thank goodness, on the floor of Parliament, right? It went 28 to 27, right? Now it could have gone the other way around exactly because one out of the three Sodelpa, group decided to vote, the other way. And if two of them had decided, well, you'd have had the same government in place. So it was incredible drama, yes.
Yes, indeed. And 28, 27, there was a rogue element that did not follow the directive of the party. And
Yes.
Vice President Andre Chale did say yesterday that the three MPs of the Sodelpa party would be given party directives as to which
Yeah.
way to vote. That didn't happen, and it was clear and plainly obvious to everyone that one vote went to the Fiji First Party side. As you say, things could have been so different. But
Yes.
let's look at the positives that came out. The three votings that happened in Parliament today. The first one for the new Speaker, and that also went 28-27. And the
Seven,
new
eight.
Speaker, Ratu Nengama Lalambalavu, was chosen. And that was a moment in time for me because it captured the essence of how the voting was going to progress.
Yeah.
And the big suspense was going to be, was it
Yes.
going to be 28-27 for the Speaker and the Deputy Speaker? And lo and behold, anything could happen for the Prime Ministership. Your thought?
Yes, yes. Well, exactly as you said. In fact, I was thinking now, is there? Of course, there is a master strategist in the house, and they could have been planning anything. Let the opposition have a few crumbs, but when it comes to the real killer blow with the prime minister, we will get our votes, our numbers. But luckily, it didn't happen that way. And well, it is a triumph for democracy, right? Whatever the hiccups on the way, we now have had a peaceful change of government. Now, Sashi, I am just a stand-in speaker for you for this program, as I told you at the beginning, because really the people who ought to be speaking to the nation at this moment, if they can get away from the parties, well-deserved parties, would be, Prime Minister Rambuka and the Deputy Prime Minister Biman Prasad, and also the leader of the Sodelpa, you know,
Mm.
uh, uh, Bill Gavoka, right? But I'm a stand-in speaker, but I may say a few little things which the government side may not want to say because of the adage, be gracious in victory. Be
And I
gracious in
believe
victory.
they will be. I
Yeah, so,
believe they
so,
will
so
be.
there's some things they would not say, but I
Mm.
feel that the public of Fiji, need to be reminded of some of these things. Just to keep in mind that this was a razor's edge outcome. It could have gone very differently for Fiji.
Well, I believe they will be very, very mindful because as once the voting had finished in Parliament, and
Yes,
the Speaker declared Mr. Sitiveni Rambuka as the Prime Minister,
yeah,
as they were making their way out to go to Government House for the swearing in, and the journalists at the door asked Mr. Rambuka a very quick question: "How are you feeling?" And he said, humbled. Just that one word, humbled. And that just personified that particular moment in time.
yeah.
I will come back to you and ask you a few very pertinent questions, things that you say perhaps the new government ministers might be reluctant to talk about. But let's just, the choice of speaker, were you surprised at all, Ratu
No,
Nangama?
no, not really. I mean, he's a seasoned politician. He's a head of a confederacy. I think Rambuka knows him very, very well,
Mm.
and it's good to have somebody from outside of the government party in Parliament being made speaker to keep their numbers in terms of voting and all that. So I'm not surprised by that. Not surprised by Lenora,
Mhm.
being made deputy speaker. It's actually, these are very, very good choices because they've got a bit of a gender balance up there at the top, and it's important to have women, in top positions as well. So I'm not surprised by that. Yeah,
And
no.
then, of course, we came to the big, big vote. That was tension filled, and
Yes.
and then a new prime minister. When I say new, someone tried to correct me. When I said a brand new prime minister, well, yes, obviously he has
Yes.
been a prime minister before. Let me tell you, uh,
Yes.
23 years, 7 months,
Yeah.
5 days ago,
Yeah.
or 8,620 days since last being the prime minister.
Yeah.
Fiji's new prime minister, and I use the word new, is of
Yes.
course Sitiveni Rambuka, was voted in, sworn in. What
Yeah.
was that moment in time for you?
Well, to be honest, we need to go back to the election results and what happened after that. Election results were finalized. We thought it was a done deal and all that. But then, you began to see all these machinations, the bringing in of the supervisor of elections to do this and that. And all of us were thinking, oh my God. We also saw, and I think, one day some historians will get to the truth of the matter, that there were attempts by the people who were in government to get the commander, Colony Y, to intervene.
Mm.
And I never thought that we'd get to the stage where, in fact, the people in Parliament would actually elect their prime minister. But thank God, and then Fiji can be really, really grateful to this commander of the RFMF, who stood firm and said, "No, I will not interfere with the civilian processes." There were people in the Navy who were people expected to go in and step in and do some mayhem. They stood firm, probably, and decided they're not going to do it. So to me, Sashi, uh, this election may have been a historical turning point for Fiji, in that once people do a coup, a second coup, a third coup, the way it happens in many African countries, right? The logical conclusion is that these coups are going to go forever. It's going to be a cuckoo land. And I
Yes.
think in this election, Koloni Y stood firm, and I think he has now maybe done a major, major courageous act to salvage the reputation of the RFMF, and basically that there will not be any more coups in Fiji. So that's the first thing that I was thinking when Rambuka was elected as prime minister. And of course I know of him before when I was in the parliament between 96 and 99, that he was a collaborative person. He worked together with Mr. Jairam Reddy, the late Reddy, and when he put up a partnership with Professor Biman Prasad, I wasn't surprised, because he is a changed man in the sense that he's changed from what he was like when he did the 87 coup. So in one sense, he's a new prime minister, but in another sense, he's still the old prime minister he was when he lost the elections in 1999, and he quietly went away,
Mm.
graciously went away. He didn't go around agitating, hey, let's have another coup to keep me in place. So it is a landmark election, Sashi.
Indeed, and that's why I said it's a historical day for Fiji today.
Yes, it is. It
Now,
is.
you stole my thunder. You've already said that the Army Commander Colonel Y is
Yes,
to be congratulated for the stance that he's taken, and that has brought a sense of relief, a
yes,
sense of calmness, and a sense of stability to the whole process leading up to today's parliamentary processes.
yes.
Agree?
Yeah, oh, absolutely, absolutely. And my own personal feeling is, to be honest, right? When I looked at what was happening in the 4 or 5 months before the election, right? There were opposition candidates who were being charged with all kinds of little things, put into jail. There were opposition candidates, like Linda Tumbuya and Daniel Lomandine, taken to the police station for no good reason. There was a fantastic candidate for NFP, Richard Naidu, the lawyer, who was convicted by some judge from Sri Lanka for allegedly pointing out a spelling mistake by a judgment, right? And disqualified from standing on election. So to me, it was astonishing that the people, candidates in the People's Alliance Party, in the NFP, right, stayed firm and still fought the battles. I mean, who can forget, the attempts to blacken the character of NFP leader, Professor Biman Prasad, and despite all that, they stayed firm, they fought the battles, right, and eventually they have triumphed. So I must say that all those provisional candidates, for Sodelpa, for People's Alliance, for NFP, they must be commended for continuing with the battles, even though everything was stacked against them in a way no other previous election has done to any opposition party. None.
It was astonishing the strength and character shown by those individuals in the National Federation Party who came under attack, as well as in the People's Alliance Party, who were FICAC'd, who were taken in for questioning. It was amazing. It was a strength that I have not seen in previous election. That inner strength that existed, and a lot of it goes to their faith, and the number of People's Alliance candidates that I had spoken to. they all had this inner belief that in the end, truth shall prevail. And that's what happened. Now, let's not forget, in this, whilst people celebrate the new government, Sodelpa obviously played a very, very important role, and it's hats off to them.
Yes,
The pressure they have been in this last week, they
yes.
were told by the supervisor of elections of anomalies, and they had their own general secretary resigning, and then staying on for 30 odd days, etc. As you said, people were locked out of yesterday's management committee meeting. Your thoughts on the Sodelpa team?
Well, the thing is that we can quibble and say, well, they need not have gone through all this rigmarole anyway. They should have just joined up with the People's Alliance and NFP straight after the election result became known, right? But, from my understanding, there was enormous pressure brought to bear upon them, enormous incentives put their way. The business community, who have been benefiting, from the previous government for the last 10, 15 years, apparently got together in enormous amounts of money to offer as embellishments to Sudelpa people to go the different path. And thank goodness, even though some of them were personally inclined because of family connections or this and that, in the end, the party decided, and again, it was a knife edge, right? It was a knife edge decision to go with the people who they had agreed with previously to join. So in on the floor of the House, you've got to commend the two Sodelpa members who voted, according to the agreement they had with Rambuka and Professor Biman Prasad, and they've got to be commended. They could have gone the other way, and all it needed was two of the Sodelpa people to vote for Fiji First, and we would not be having this meeting. In fact, I wouldn't even have bothered to come and speak on your program. So they must be commended because they resisted all the embellishments. And I think Bill Gavoka has to be commended. Whatever his personal views about which way he'd like to go, in the end, he stood on the floor of the parliament and nominated Sitiveni Rambuka for prime minister. So, and of course, Vasu, let's not forget Vasu,
Mm.
he's the former corrections officer. He stayed firm right throughout, right
Yes.
throughout all the deliberations and everything. He wasn't going to budge at all. And, at least I'm glad that person had a strong conscience, and decline to think. I mean, push comes to shove in the end. Look, Sashi, if you were to ask people around the country, what they would say is, thank goodness the change has occurred. And in the end, when push came to shove, even Beni Marama and Kayum gracefully applauded. I don't know whether you noticed in the parliament when
Yes, I was just going to bring that up because
when the speaker announced the result, they applauded.
yes, and then they did say that. Well, Bani Marama said that I hope I'll be elected as the opposition leader. So that was one point,
Yeah.
and then I believe um, there was this acceptance, and
Yes.
of course, when they came back from Government House, the
Yes.
dynamic shifted because the
Yeah.
former government went to the right side of the chambers, and
Yes.
the new government went to the left side of the chambers as we look at the House.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Yeah.
yes, I mean, look, my aim tonight, and I'm not saying this to you, Dr. Wadanarsi,
Yeah.
is to my viewers. My aim is not to come here and dish out dirt and to criticize. There's been a transition waiting to take place after 16 years.
Yes.
We've had a change of government today. We should collectively all focus on the positives that needs to come out of this. Now, so you mentioned Bani Marama and Kayum being gracious. Anything else you'd like to add? They'll make a very good opposition team. I can tell you that.
Well, they will be formidable. Yes, I
Yeah.
mean, let's face it. I mean, but as far as the public are concerned, and as far as the media are concerned, right? I think that there's a lot of peace and calm amongst the media organizations and the journalists. Well, at least some of the ones who've been neutral, right? I have been thoroughly disappointed, with two media organizations, who have been basically propaganda, arms for the previous government. And I sincerely hope they mend their ways. And knowing them, of course, one of them will mend its way because it's a government-owned broadcasting corporation, and the other one will mend its way because it's a business-owned thing. And just for their own sake of their businesses, they're going to become neutral. But the ordinary public, will be so glad that that climate of fear is now gone.
And
That
that
the,
is
the
very,
freedom,
very important. It's
yes,
very,
with
very
freedom of
important.
expression, people will not be afraid anymore to express their points of view. Whereas previously we were thinking, oh my God, even businessmen. I mean, I've spoken to quite a few business people who've said, God, I agree with what you're writing, Warren, but we dare not open our mouth because we'll be killed as a business. And
All
sadly,
right.
there were people in the previous government who were so incredibly vindictive, right, that they would have killed businesses that dared to disagree with them, even if it was on principle.
The other thing of note, as far as my observations go, is the role played by Australia and New Zealand in the lead up to today. Your comments on that?
Well, I'm very happy with the New Zealand Minister for Foreign Affairs. I mean, and the New Zealand government, because they came out early when the results were clear. Which way the decision should go. They came out and expressed support for the incoming government even before this vote on the floor of Parliament. And I think they would be scratching their heads to think, what the hell's going on? This is a done deal. Surely, they should form government. Why are you having all these tenterhooks, and drama about who is going to be nominated on the floor of Parliament and who is going to get the votes? So for them to come out at the big, early on and say, we are so happy at the incoming government, that was really good for the morale, I think, of People's Alliance and NFP. Uh, of course, the Australian government has been very, very circumspect. They have been, in fact, for the last few years. They're so frightened, of a Fiji government, which undermines their version of regional geosecurity, that they dare not say, "Oh, we welcome the new government." But I suspect that quietly in Canberra tonight, there will be quite a few little parties going on, right,
Mm.
about all the possibilities that they now have of strengthening ties with Fiji. Not just in giving aid money and all that. It's a much bigger story than just giving aid now to Fiji and Vanuatu and Samoa and Tonga. So I think there'll be a lot of relieved ministers, foreign ministers in Australia and New Zealand who are looking at this result. And I think Fiji needs to thank them as well, for
Mm.
for their positive, constructive attitude towards Fiji.
All right. Viewers, tell me if you can, by your text messages, what are some of the immediate things that you believe the new government should target? Immediate things, maybe your top three. If you can send me that, I'll be very, very grateful. And I believe we have our first guest. And once I can see that in the green room, well, then I'll excuse you
Sure,
for a
sure.
moment.
No worries, mate.
And but I'm just waiting for that connection to take place.
Yeah, yeah,
I've
yeah. No
I've
worries.
I've dragged him out of a party. I'm not going to say much, and um, and I really really appreciate the effort being made to just come on. All right, let's go on. We'll just talk to our guest who's with me, and welcome to our Deputy Prime Minister, uh, Manua Kamikamiva, who is also the Minister for External Trade, Cooperative, and SMEs. Manua Nimbula Vinaka, congratulations. Welcome to SSTP. Come
Yeah,
on in.
Bolu
Come on in.
naga
Yes, you're on a mobile phone.
pleasure
I can tell
to
you
be on
that.
your program again on Christmas Eve, and uh,
I'm so happy that you volunteered your time. I dragged you out of a party. How's the celebrations going?
yeah, no, they're going great. Sashi, I suppose it's just about goodness about 10 days, and all the stop start announcements, and yeah, it's been it's a very it's been tiring, but the outcome is what the people of Fiji wanted, which is change, and we're thankful to God. We're thankful to everyone who's been supporting this journey, and yeah, we change has come to Fiji.
Now, I was observing you while the votes were being shown by the Secretary General. You were keeping your own tally. I could see that. And at which precise point you knew that it was in the bag?
Sachi, I was telling our guys here, it was actually the last vote. Came down to the last vote, just by total coincidence. Our leader was ahead about 26-19, and Frank caught up. There were 3 votes to go. One to Frank, one to party leader or prime minister now, and it came down to that last vote. And if I don't ever do that again, I'll be very thankful. Sashi, it was a very harrowing experience. Let's say that. Yeah.
So when does Parliament now get into session in the new year?
Yeah, but Kirby Sashi is the speakers adjourn Parliament. I think the next thing on the agenda is the President's speech to open Parliament.
Yes.
He hasn't, the President hasn't scheduled a time. I think he was prioritizing the swearing in of the new government, so that happened today, thankfully. So I'm assuming next year or after New Year, and we'll probably have the session where the President speaks to the country and to the new Parliament. So yeah, it's
all right. Now, what is your message to the country? It's Christmas time. I believe you have a lot of people to thank. What is your message to my viewers right around the world?
Yeah, I think just firstly, Sashi, if you believe in a cause and you know it's the right thing to do, and you just focus and rely on God, He delivers it. And so, on the eve of Christmas, the love of Jesus Christ, and His love for the world in sending His Son. That's the message for us in People's Alliance. We have won the elections. It's been a hard-fought elections. And of course, we've exchanged words and some harsh words. Now we're in the business of governing the country. And from my perspective, it's to have everybody that wants to help out in working together to help the country. We've regressed over the last 16 years, actually. So, my message really to Fiji is, change is here. Change has come.
Change is here. And how are you celebrating?
We just there's a band playing in the back part of the office. There's at least about, I'd say, 100 people or 200 people there. Just celebrating. They were here earlier. With the Prime Minister, and he's gone off to see his family. And a lot of us will probably have to go and see ours because we haven't been spending much time with them for the last 10 days.
Manawa, any last words, any Christmas message before you go?
Yeah, thank you, Sashi. I mean, Christmas is all about giving. and the spirit of the People's Alliance, the leaders about the love doctrine, and harboring no ill will towards anybody. That's probably a message that we'd like to share with the people of Fiji. We've all had our different political differences, but God has presented us a unique opportunity in our country to reboot the economy, reboot the way things are done, and renew our hope for a better Fiji. That's the hope from me and the message from me that we all band together and try and rebuild our country. Because certainly from where I sit, the children of this country deserve it. Their children deserve it, and it's just been a wonderful ride for me, Shashi, just to experience the rebirth, really the rebirth of our country and the recapture of its soul. And that's been probably the most basic thing for me.
Wonderfully said. I know from up above the heavens, your father must be very, very proud of you today for what you've achieved. And I thank you for that. Manua, look, thank you so much. I've stolen you from your celebrations. From SSTP, I extend an invitation to you and to your party members in the new year to be part of this program, to discuss your programs, to discuss each ministerial portfolio, to tell the people of Fiji every little change that you do. I'll be more than happy to accommodate you
Thank
to
you.
tell the people that this is the changes we have made. And I always believe an informed audience is the best audience that you've got.
Here's one for you, Shashi. Prime Minister just announced it today.
Yes.
He's allowing for Dr. Bridgeland's wife, Padma, to bring back his ashes, and she can come anytime from tomorrow. So that's just one from us on our day of swearing in, and what a nice way to celebrate Christmas. Yeah.
Well, Dr. Padmalal's brother is Wadan Narsi, and I'll get Wadan on the screen as well very quickly. Wadan, what do you say to that, Wadan?
Well, I think, Ibano, how are you, mate? Give my regards to your mother, who is an old friend of mine as well, Siteri. And she'll be very happy at what you have achieved as well. But I'm sure Padma is watching this program already, and she was so happy when the results were announced. And she was so happy that Prime Minister Mboka assured her when he met her in Auckland a few months ago that if they came into power, he was going to, approve her, remove the obstruction that was stopping her from going back. And she's so looking forward to going back because it's now 1 year actually since Professor Bridgelal passed away. So, well, thank you all, guys. I think you raised a lot of hopes, in Fiji, and congratulate you, and please pass my congratulations to all your colleagues in your government.
Thank you very much,
Thank
Wadan.
you. Thank you, Professor Nawalev.
Manua, I won't keep you. I promised you I was going to steal 5 or 10 minutes of your time. Thank you so very much. God bless you and your government, and a very Merry Christmas to you. Happy New Year to all of you, and we'll speak to you on SSTP in the new year. God bless you, Manua.
And this is Lemmy Kava imported from Fiji.
God bless you both, Shashi. Thank you, Professor, and thank you, Shashi.
Naka. That was the Deputy Prime Minister, newly sworn in Deputy Prime Minister, and the new Minister for External Trade, Cooperatives and SMEs, the Honorable Manua Kamikamida. And gentleman kept his word to me. He said he was going to steal himself out from his celebrations. And wow, then didn't take long for the Prime Minister Sitiveni Rambuka to make good his promise to the late Professor Bridgelal's widow, your sister, Padma.
Yes,
And
yes. Well, I'm sure she's watching.
As Manoa said, she can fly in tomorrow. I
Yeah,
mean, that
yeah.
is amazing. Wonderful news.
Yes, yes,
Um, it's 9:05 in Fiji. Um, whilst I'm waiting for my other guest, we'll
yes,
give our other guest 5 or 10 minutes. Let me just run through some of the ministerial lineups with you and get your quick comments on that. Now, the Prime Minister, Sitiveni Rambuka, has also undertaken the portfolio of Minister for Foreign Affairs. He'll
yes,
also be in charge of climate change and environment,
yes,
civil service,
yes.
information, and public enterprises, I think. What's your view on that portfolio?
Well, I think that that's quite a lot there. It's quite a lot there,
Mm.
and look, I think they're now feeling their way into government, and we're going to give them time to see, what the challenges are in front of them. But to me, having that foreign affairs one is important for him to build up the links, with other countries, right? And if you look at all the other ones, climate change issues and all that, huge challenges in there. And one thing that I see, which is very good, is that they have spread the ministerial positions out.
Yes.
In contrast to previous years, right? If you look at, say the Minister of Economy, he's got Minister of Economy, Planning, and Statistics, right? And they used to be part of a bundle before. A certain bloke came in, and then he acquired 7, 8, 9 other ministerial positions. In addition to that, he also looked after the previous prime minister's other 6, 7 positions. So, there's no way that any one, person can, they're not Superman, look after all these ministerial positions. So what I see that, basically the Prime Minister Rambuka has done, he's got lots of guys in there running their ministries. He's got lots of assistant ministers, good people, and the workload will be shared quite well. And if I may say something, maybe after this, right? I tell you what, people should not have high hopes. Maybe I can say that in a little while, Sashi, that the challenges in front of the government are so massive, there can be no expectation of immediate improvements in their welfare, because what is required to service the public debt is going to cripple them for quite a while.
Well, first of all, they'll have to go in and see what's left behind.
Yes,
Um,
yes,
and
yes, yes,
only then will
yes,
they be able to draw up on a new budget
yes,
to figure out which are the priorities and how best
yes,
to tackle them. But a
yes. But
good point that
yeah,
you've made, that people should not have any expectations that it's all going to change overnight.
no,
No
it's not.
way.
It's not. And if you're trying to, for example, get economic growth going, it might not be an appropriate time to start, raising the minimum wages too quickly, or trying other things, right? But one thing that we have to think about, Sashi, right, is that they have got to have the appropriate civil service team to implement what they're trying to do. Now, one thing that horrified me just prior to the election, when government was kind of in caretaker mode, right? They went ahead and appointed, 7, 8 new permanent secretaries and all that, just a month before the elections. Now, this reminds me of what the former Vice Chancellor of USP, Rajesh Chandra, did, just before he retired. In fact, a month before he retired, he made all these senior appointments around the university, knowing full well that the new Vice Chancellor, Aluwalia, would have to work with them. That was not a good thing to do. So my own personal feeling is that I hope those new appointees, if any of them are watching your program, they have the decency and the honor to resign, so that the new government can appoint their own top civil servants. And of course, including people like Kamueli, Nengama, who was,
Mm.
sacked from his position at the Bureau of Stats for no good reason. So they need to have a good team, and civil service reform at the top is going to be a hard part of their job. So it's not going to be easy, Sashi. It's not going to be easy at all. When I think of what needs to be done at the FNPF, once we get
Mm.
the statistics out from the FNPF, they've been keeping close lid on it, right? But they will now have to publish their 2022 annual report, and we will see, clearly what has been happening to the state of members' balances and all that. So the task in front of them is huge. And then I did write in one of my articles in the Fiji Times some time back that the next Minister for Economy and Finance is going to inherit a poisoned chalice.
which brings me to that point. The next Minister for Finance is Honorable Dr. Biman Prasad, Deputy Prime Minister, and under his portfolio comes strategic planning, national development, and statistics.
Yeah.
Now, as I said, we don't know the state of the money situation.
No.
And now Biman has a huge task ahead of him
Yes.
because, you know, as you say, for a lot of financial aspects, we've been kept in the dark.
Yes.
Statistics have been few and far between.
Yes.
And FNPF, as you mentioned, um, your views on Dr. Biman Prasad as the new Minister for Finance?
Well, look at it this way, right? There have certain things which have happened over the last 16 years, which have stopped the Auditor General from auditing massive amounts of expenditure of taxpayers' money. And an example that I can give you, of course, is Fiji Roads Authority, which was converted to a kind of a independent public enterprise, even though they were fully funded by taxpayers. The Auditor General was not allowed to go in and audit where all that money went. And of course, over a period of 6 years, where PWD used to get $40 million a year, these fellows were getting, 400, $500 million a year. And a large part of our public debt was built up by this incredible over expenditure, which was very inefficiently used. I mean, no ADB project would have had that kind of wasteful expenditure. And then 5 years later, you find the roads breaking down, you find the electricity breaking down, you find the water systems breaking down. So one of the first things that Biman will have to do is to get the actual statistics, get them back into under the supervision of the government, and make sure the Auditor General is able to go and bring out all the statistics about where the money has been going, so that whatever money they spend in the future is spent wisely. So yeah, he's a good man for that job, because I mean he's a professor of economics, and I think that he can count on the support of all his ministerial colleagues. He can count on the support of the top civil servants. Whether it's in FERCA, which is a very important part, of the civil service, because it's the revenue collecting arm, right, of government, and of course the Bureau of Statistics. Once it is cleaned out and is given the freedom to do what the previous government statistician used to do, including a certain friend of mine, Mr. Tim Bainimarama, the late, rest in
Yeah.
peace. He was a bloody good government statistician. And, the previous government, they got rid of him because he refused to bow to their demands. So,
Yes.
so I think Professor Prasad has a huge challenge, on his hands. But, I look at Fiji, there are any number of very, very good, decent citizens, right, who will put their hands up,
Yeah.
to help this government. Not just Professor Prasad in Ministry of Finance, but also I look at the other ministries, and well, look, maybe Richard Naidu is not Attorney General yet, but I'm quite sure that this government will call on him to provide his legal services for all the incredible reforms that need to be done, to the constitution and so on. Which I don't think I want to go into it, to be honest. It's a challenge for the current government, and there are some absolute headaches in there. So
Well,
give
well
them time.
then,
Give them time. Yeah.
well then, as you know, they say it ain't over until the fat lady sings, and the other one is we call it karma in Hindi, uh, and Kevalangis and others call it karma. What do they say? Karma is a sweet bee, right? Well, how about this one? The new Attorney General and the Minister for Justice,
Yes.
Honorable Siromi Turanga. Now,
Yeah.
he was the gentleman who
Yeah.
was unceremoniously dumped. Rather,
Yes.
his contract was terminated. He was
Yes.
a magistrate in Nandi. And
Yes.
today he has become the new Attorney General and the Minister for Justice. He has a lot of work outlined for him as well, hasn't he?
Yes. Yes. Well, he does. And the good thing, I mean, I heard, both Rambuka and Professor Bhima Prasad say is that they're not going to be vindictive. They're
Yes.
not going to be settling scores, right? Whatever they're going to be doing is going to try and take Fiji forward. And so I'm quite sure the new Attorney General is not going to go around looking at all those, shonky, people in government. I mean, who were responsible for him, losing his employment and so on. And I think, the approach of the new government, I think, is to be commended, because there's nothing to be gained by trying to get revenge. Nothing to be gained. And I hope, and I, in fact, not just hope, I think they're going to be kind to the people who were their enemies in the future. Even some people, I mean, who really, really dislike them and even prevented them from forming government. I think they'll be forgiven, in the true tried Christian tradition. But I sincerely hope that the people who are doing the forgiving, they don't forget, and they
Right.
make sure that the mistakes of history are not repeated.
Well
You know,
said. I like that.
yes, mm,
That the mistakes are not repeated
yes,
and that it's not forgotten. Very,
no,
very
mm,
important. Now, a couple more portfolios that I want to discuss with you. Then I want to go to some of our viewers' comments on what their priorities are. Now, Minister for Home Affairs, which includes the police, the military, and correctional services,
yes,
as well as immigration, Honorable Pio Tikunduandua.
yeah.
Any thoughts on that?
Oh, excellent choice. I mean, he's been in the military as well, and let's remember, he was, working for Bainimarama himself in his office, right? And he's somebody who was a person with great dignity. He was physically assaulted outside the parliamentary house. He's punished for it, but he bore up with it, and he suffered it, and with great dignity and silence. And to me, the people in the military will look at him and have a lot of confidence in him. Yeah, and just remember, I mean, that all these ministries that he's got, responsibility for, they're politically very sensitive ministries, and he's going to bring, absolute order to them and decency.
Well
Decency is a
said.
big word, and to be honest, I mean, that's one thing that's been missing, for 16 years. There hasn't been the decency. And these characters, well, I mean, I look at them, they announced beforehand that they were all going to take a one-third pay cut, in their salaries and all that. Well, where in the world, do you have, a new government coming in and saying, we're going to take a pay cut? So the people in Fiji ought to feel some comfort that, okay, we put them in a position of power. They could have been like previous ministers who we shall not name, who
No.
who, who increased their salaries and per diem to $3,000 a day and all that. These are people who are going to have reasonable, moderate salaries and perks and things, which understands the trials and tribulations of ordinary people, the troubles they're going through. And if you look at all the letters to the editor that have been written for the last 5 years from, well-known characters, I mean, these are people who everybody in Fiji knows, right? They've talked about the hardships they've faced. And you've got people like, in Parliament, like Sashi Kiran and them, who have been going around and doing all this poverty alleviation work. Well, she's a deputy minister now. And,
Yes.
and I fully expect that she's going to be a very, very good assistant minister. And well, Pio is a good bloke, I think, and he deserves that position. And I think he will do a very, very good job.
All right, one more. I'll just go through one more portfolio. I believe this is an important portfolio. And this is the Minister for Employment,
Yes,
Productivity, and particularly industrial relations,
yes,
which
yes,
has been something of a no in Fiji for so many years. And
yes,
the Minister for those portfolios, Honorable Agni Deo Singh.
yes,
Um,
yes,
I
yeah,
initially thought he might get education. That's what
yes,
I
yes,
thought.
yes,
And
yes,
but later on, after he was announced as the Minister for Employment,
yes,
Productivity, and Industrial Relations,
yes.
well, I thought maybe it's meant to be.
Well, my thoughts were exactly as yours because with his long experience in teaching in Fiji, I thought he would have made an ideal minister for education, right?
Mm.
But the thing is about the Ministry for Employment and Industrial Relations. There's a huge task ahead for the Fiji government to bring unions and their representatives back in centrally into decision making, to have them represented on the boards of FNPF, to have them support the wages council's mechanism so that good wage increases can be granted so as not to put employers out of business and all that. So it's not an unimportant task. It's a seriously important task. And look, in the future, who knows, Mr. Rambuka, he'll have the option, of course, of shuffling portfolios and things. And Agni's, long experience in the Ministry of Education might still come in handy. But he's got a challenge there in front of him as well. I'm quite sure that the union leaders, right, around the
Mm.
country, they will be so happy that he's there, in that position, and at least that the unions are represented in government.
All right, and I just did a quick count of all the ministers and assistant ministers sworn in today.
Yes,
SSTP has had 10 of them as
yes.
guests on this program over the last year. And I just counted that.
Uh,
Um,
Well,
that
I
is
hope
wonderful.
sincerely, Sashi, I sincerely hope, and I've said this before to you, you have done an enormous bit of work in introducing the people of Fiji to the opposition parliamentary. I mean, you gave the option to the government people to come as well, and they
Yes.
always declined because they thought they had the media all sewn up. But you have given all the opposition people room and space to come in and express their views. And I sincerely hope that they return the favor so that, when they're in power, they don't become arrogant and say, oh, I don't need to appear on Sashi Singh's program anymore.
Mm.
Whereas previously, of course, they were so happy to appear on your program. Anyway, I'm quite sure they understand that. And I'm quite sure they will appear because, it's not going to be hunky dory, for at least a couple of years. And they might like to use your platform to get across to the people of Fiji in a way that no other media in Fiji does. Not no local television station, has been doing the kind of thing that you have been doing. No holds barred questions, time and space for the people to express their views. So I think
I,
they will appear. They will appear, Sashi.
I appreciate your kind words, Wadan. Now, as I said to Manoa, this platform is open to the new government, and as I invited him, whatever change you make, use my platform and
Yes,
tell the public, keep them informed, keep them appraised, and these kind of things will only help the people of Fiji to know what their government is doing. And talking about the previous government, well, I never even had the courtesy of a reply. But like I said, today is not the day to turn back the clock and talk about things that's gone by. Well, then I'd
yes.
just like to run by some of our viewers' comments.
Okay.
I did
Not
ask
not not
if
not too
if
long. I
you,
hope my
no, no,
grog is
no.
my grog is run out.
All right, I'll let you go in about 5 or 6 minutes.
Okay, mate. Yep.
Um, some of the viewers' comments. Uh, the screen's moving so fast. All right, here we go. Um, Let me just say, pay cut for opposition MPs. Well, we've discussed that. These current government MPs, the new ones, they've said that they'll cut their pays by 1/3. Um, Let me hear. All right, here we go. Nomboro Cole says reinstate USP funding, review Chief Justice performance, release all political prisoners. That's a comment from one viewer. Um, Another viewer says, Banivalu says, cut down on capital expenditure in the first year, improve and proper maintenance on current infrastructure. Now, that's not a
Well,
bad call,
yeah.
but
Can you
like you
start with
said,
the first ones before you go further? The first
yeah,
two, 3 points you made were,
reinstate USP funding.
yep, that's taken for granted. It will be done.
Mm.
Whether they give it in installments, but it will be done because Rambuka has promised that, and I think hopefully we can get Aluwalia and his wife back into Fiji so that he can keep close tabs on the university management. Yeah, the second one you were saying,
Review Chief Justice performance. In
yeah,
fact, I believe the entire
yes,
judicial system should be
yes.
reviewed.
Yes, yes, yes. Well,
Yeah.
my own personal feeling is right that if the Attorney General's office tries to do all that, there can be allegations. Oh, this is political point scoring and all that, right? But my own personal feeling is that Rambuka's government, and with Professor Biman Prasad and them and Sodelpa, they will not be averse to getting in outside senior High Court judges from Australia and New Zealand to bring their expertise and standing to come in and do some of these very, very difficult jobs. Because, something like reviewing the Chief Justice, reviewing all the judges who've made terrible, terrible decisions in Fiji, it'll be so much better for the government to have it done by an external body. And I suspect that there is even one big Pandora's box, which is review the constitutional state of Fiji.
Yes.
That is something that if the government can get a panel of judges from Australia, New Zealand, and in the International Bar Association to help them with, nobody can then accuse them, oh, you're doing this, to suit yourself and all that. Let's get the experts to come and do it. So it's a very, very tough nut to crack, the judicial services, Sashi, and I think the government would be well advised, to get external expertise who cannot be accused of being, partisan to anybody.
Release of political prisoners.
Well, again, same thing, Sashi. To do that would be to invite, all kinds of criticisms. I think that there ought to be a thorough review done of all the people who have been jailed, all these things, to see whether there's any merit. I mean, South Africa, one of the things they did, they had the Truth and Justice and Reconciliation Commission, right? It could be that this is the way Fiji needs to go, to get a Truth, Justice and Reconciliation Commission to look at the problem in its entirety and to see whether, in fact, there are political prisoners, who were unfairly done by because of vendettas by certain individuals. So again, it is not something that I think the current government wants to take on the responsibility of. They leave it to a proper judicial review. And the Truth and Justice Commission, well, people have been asking for that for a long, long time.
Mm.
Whether it ever comes or not, I'm not going to hold my breath for that. But
All
the
right,
other
let's move
things,
on.
can be done. A review of all those cases of political prisoners.
Okay. Mahan Prasad writes, number one, change of supervisor of elections. Well, that's going to come, undoubtedly.
Done deal. Done
Done
deal.
deal.
There's never
Remove.
been
Mm.
a biased supervisor of elections as we have seen. Never has been in the history of Fiji.
Remove FICAC.
I think, again, there needs to be a review done. And I suspect, a good judge coming in, a set of judges would say, hold on, you've got the Director of Police Prosecutions. You've got the Office of Public Prosecutions. You've got the police. Why do you need a FICAC? And then, of course, if they did a review of what FICAC has been doing for the last, 10 years, my goodness, you'd find it's been used as a political tool, right, to attack anybody who the government has not liked. So whether that review comes back and says, look, you don't need a FICAC, or so you need some other form of it, to investigate corporate corruption and all that, sure, why not? I mean, Australia has been in the throes of trying to set up, an anti-corruption body, which is not really in the area of the Director of Public Prosecution. So maybe you need a body, but with a different terms of reference.
Sure, I buy that. Now, investigation of past government unaudited funds and finance.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And it's not just government. It has to go to extend to all the public enterprises which have been given huge amounts of taxpayer money. And I can look at not just Fiji Revenue Authority, but I can also look at, things like, FBC and all that, Fiji Development Bank. I mean, there are all kinds of things which have been done behind closed doors involving taxpayers' funds. And the question is, have those funds been allocated wisely? And I think they should all be audited. Yes, indeed.
All right, moving on. Just bear with me. Someone says Lami cover in the house. Taki, Professor Wadden. Our very own Nikhil Singh writes, remove all restrictions on the unions and officials. That's coming,
Yeah,
I believe.
yeah,
That's
yeah.
part of,
That's a done
yeah,
deal. Yep,
that's
that's
a
a
done
done deal.
deal, indeed.
And you're not going to have any supervisor of elections going and supervising elections of union officials. I mean, one question I once asked, about the FNPF. Here's a body which is owned, by all, hundreds of thousands of people throughout Fiji. How is it that this government, which allegedly likes to monitor elections of unions, has never ever had elections of people to the board of FNPF? Never ever. And in fact,
Oh.
the minister has been appointing all his chamchas, and people who have been involved in business dealings. I mean, there will need to be an audit of all the big business deals that FNPF board has approved, and to see whether any board members of the FNPF have had conflicts of interest. That would be interesting.
And if you can tell our viewers what chamcha is.
Oh, chamcha is stooge. a stooge.
Absolutely. All right. um, Harish Prasad writes, can we see all the money trail for the last 16 years? There have been enormous aids, loans, grants, and gifts given to the government. And how would you respond to that?
Well, absolutely needed. There needs to be a real financial, transparency objective, and you can only do that by looking at what has happened in the past. Because let's not forget, Sashi, right? Let's not forget. Before you can clean up a system,
Hmm.
you have to know what dirt was there before. And for me, I was really horrified when I looked at the donors list to the Fiji First Party between 2014 and 2018, and I saw that individual companies, like Tappu's, Vinod Patel's, R.C. Manubai, C.J. Patel, they have donated more than 100,000 each, some more than 500,000, and one almost 1 million. This
Yes,
was up to 4 years ago, and the question is, there were donations being made in the names of wives and daughters and mothers and even employees, when the limit, according to the supervisor of election, was supposed to be $10,000 per donor. Now, all these Gujarati companies, they don't give money for nothing. If they give $1,000, they're getting $1 million in return. So all these networks and things have to be identified by the current government, because you can be sure of one thing. Businessmen don't, have permanent friends. They have permanent interests. And you can be sure that the new government, there will be a whole lot of business people who will be making their way to the doors of all the ministers, and offering them all the goodies they used to offer to the previous government. So all that has to be brought out, because if you're going to have a clean government by Rambuka, all those things that used to happen before have to stop. And you can only stop it by recognizing it, identifying it, and letting the public know that this is what used to happen to their taxpayers' money. Because let's face it, the public debt is now 100% of GDP, I think, probably maybe even more when the truth comes out,
that's
right?
right.
Oh, the children of Fiji people, the voters, and their grandchildren will be paying this public debt for the next 10, 15 years.
More than
So
that, I believe.
oh,
Even more than
more
that,
than
yeah.
that, man. I mean, it's going to be a nightmare for the next Minister of Finance, and
Hmm.
to pay for the public debt before, as I've explained before, you have to pay for the public debt first before you can pay for education, water, electricity, or social welfare. And if your public debt takes away the chunk of your revenue, what you have got left, in my last estimate, was instead of 80% of revenue they used to have before, now it is about 60 to 64% of revenue. In other words, 34%, 35% is gone towards servicing public debt. It's not going to be easy. Not going to be easy.
All right, I'm just going to confine you to just three more. And
Okay.
the timing is yours. I
Okay.
mean, so Jay Thamani writes, Fiji Airways needs a thorough review. Your comments?
Agreed, agreed. Because there's been a huge amount of FNPF funds and taxpayer funds injected into them, and the question for the taxpayers is, are they going to get all this back, right? And there's all these deals between Fiji Airways and changing ownership of shares and all these kinds of things with Qantas and all that. Well, I recognize the importance of Fiji Airways for keeping tourism buoyant, but questions need to be asked. Well, could Air Pacific and Air New Zealand, have done the same? There's no intention to cast any aspersions on the current management of FNPF, right? But then, I also wonder, how on earth could people who are CEOs of FNPF suddenly go and chair boards of other organizations? Don't they have
Yes,
enough work for themselves?
it's
It's
true.
like, the guy who's the head of FEA, right? He went off, and he was asked to, and he agreed to go and do all these other kinds of things on other boards. Whereas if you look at the state of electricity, in Fiji, you would think that he's got his hands full already. Why would he go and take on other boards? My sincere hope is that the new government doesn't allow multiple ownership, representation of boards, multiple membership. So the question, that you have, who's asking you about Fiji West, oh, there needs to be a forensic audit of this. I mean, I actually think that, my goodness, this is a lot of work for accounting companies. If the government is going to do forensic audits of all of these organizations, which
Mm.
have, been sucking out taxpayers' funds, well, I hope we've got enough good accountants in Fiji, and we don't want the old accountants to come in.
Absolutely. All of a sudden, the demand for auditors is just going to go sky high. Now,
Yes.
um, Chandrasekaran, former, I believe, police inspector in Fiji,
Yeah.
soccer referee, Chandrasekaran writes, the sale of FEA to Japan entrepreneurs, should that be investigated?
The sale of.
FEA, Fiji Electricity.
Oh, well, it should be, man. It's a monopoly and all that, and I have been hearing through the grapevine, and you don't know whether it's true or not. But a special consultancy company was set up, which involved, people we all know, and they creamed off 3% commission on the sale of a portion of FEA. The FEA has been working very. I've always said, if you've got a state enterprise which is profitable, why do you want to sell it? Why do
Yes.
you want to sell it? If it's not profitable, by all means, sell off shares so that the new private owners can come on board and make it, more efficient. But you have a successful company which was given all the increases in electricity prices that they've been asking for, a monopoly. So of course they made a lot of profit. But so why sell off a large chunk of it? Yeah, yeah, of course they need to be investigated, Sashi.
And there's a few, and I'll try to summarize that.
Yeah.
And the summary that I can now suggest to you: should head honchos, those people holding top portfolios, be made to resign, and applications be made, and selection panel selects people on merit, not as to who you know, the chumches, like you say, stooges.
Should the heads of all those places.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, I just think that government is in a tight position here because these are the persons who are absolutely critical, right, for the operation of these organizations. And one of the things that has horrified me personally as an economist, is that since 2006, there were a whole lot of state enterprises and so on where people in running the management of these state enterprises, their salaries were on par with the permanent secretaries' salaries at that time, right? And then they were suddenly semi-privatized, and then they were getting all these expatriates from abroad and so on, some of whom came for a year, resigned allegedly for personal reasons and all that, and went away, and their salaries were shot up to $500,000. I mean, all of a sudden, there was no control about salaries. So, when you look back, the ministers' salaries were at one stage, at a particular level. They were bumped up incredibly. And then permanent secretary salaries were bumped up in order to keep up with them. But the rest of the civil service salaries stayed where they were. So it was like, a few were being rewarded because of the control of the whole of government finance by the people at the top. And, it's a huge problem. But, what your correspondent is suggesting, right, that you ask all head honchos to resign, well, might be a shortcut way to do it. Might be a shortcut way to do it, right? And with of course, if the guarantee is given that look, somebody who has got a proven record, will be reappointed, right? And it could be, well, the government may at some point decide, let's have some standard salary scales across the whole of all the state enterprises. Let's first of all ask whether the best local person was available, was appointed or not. And if no good local person was available, then certainly, sure, let's go overseas and get some very, very good expatriate. So these are thorny problems. I mean, Sashi, Sashi, your listeners' heads must be spinning, to think about the problems that Rambuka and Professor Biman Prasad and Bill Gavoka are going to be facing, in government and their ministers. It's a huge, huge headaches they're facing, and I just sincerely hope that they will. I'm sure, because I personally know there's so many top civil servants from Fiji who were eliminated, who were got rid of, and or who resigned, and they're working all around the Pacific, elsewhere. I hope they that they will come back now to Fiji and offer their services to this new government, right?
Yeah.
Because what we need are committed citizens of Fiji, and former citizens, who have the energy and the decency and, the ethics and the morality to come back and help their country in this time of need. I think there are lots of them, Sashi.
Well said indeed, Wadan. And how does this affect you in terms of your articles for the Fiji Times?
Oh,
I know for a fact that you've gone through some severe censorship. I
yeah,
hope, I hope that that censorship level it's somewhat relaxed, so you can write in the free spirit that you always do. I hope that
yes,
happens for you.
yes. Well, Richard Naidu's company used to make a lot of money from censoring, from vetting. I think he used to get more than the couple of hundred that Fiji Times pays me. But to be honest, now that we've got a decent government in place, I don't really think that there will be that urge, to write critical articles, for the Fiji Times. And they have been so afraid. The poor journalists there, they didn't even ask me to write a Saturday article on the results of the 2022 elections, even though on my blog I've got a lot of stuff, right? But the Fiji public don't read my blog necessarily. So whether I write any more for Fiji Times, well, I don't know. I think it's also time for a new breed of academics. In Fiji, you got USP, University, Fiji University. You got Fiji National University. I once suggested to Fiji Times management about 3-4 years ago when Hank Katz was there. Listen, get a prize going, every year for the best writer on politics, on the economy, on the environment, on the religion, or this and that, and give them awards, and encourage a new generation of writers to write for Fiji Times. There are
Yeah.
many who would do that, and I hope that they step up. As for myself, I think it's kind of time for me to sort of hang up my boots, and move on to other things. And well, if Fiji Times needs some assistance, to mentor a new lot of journalists and things, I'm quite happy to do that. On my YouTube thing, I once gave a series of lectures, to the USP Journalism School about 8, 10, 12 years ago, about the problems of journalists in Fiji and what my experience was about what they could do and what they ought to do. And so they're all on YouTube. So if people want to, there's about 14, 15 segments, they can go and watch it. Whatever I said on that program is still just as relevant, probably even more relevant now, given that we've gone through a massive era of media censorship. We didn't have that media censorship then.
All right.
So, yeah.
What about plugging your blog site? Um, I'm giving you an
Well,
opportunity.
well,
What is your blog?
Narsi on Fiji is there,
Mm.
but I'm going to be stopping my activities on that as well, because you'll know that I've produced 3 books already of community education writings. There was 2 that came out in the last few months because I put on a spurt to try and help the opposition candidates. So one is called A Fair Go for All Fiji, which is on workers, women, and FNPF people and all that. And the third one was Our Battles for Democracy and Freedom of the Media and Law and Order in Fiji. It's a long, long book. And so that's on sale at the USP Book Center. There's a very limited number of copies, there, because I only printed 400 because I printed them out of my own money. And I'm at the moment in a loss situation, although there was a very kind businessman, who did throw some money at me so that I didn't go into too big a loss. But the books are there, and I've got a fourth one about to come out maybe in the new year, which is called For a Decent Fiji.
Okay.
And that will talk about religion, our real religion, which is sports. It'll talk about the decent people who I have known, people who I've written obituaries for, people like Siva Timbao, my old friend, the late Amalia Rokati Vona, Dr. Apateng Galo, my friend, departed friends like Kishore Chetty and others. So that book actually will canvas a lot of things which are not in the first 3 volumes. And I may
Right.
throw in a few articles in a section at the end, which is already quite long, because on that there's a big section on education, a big section on USP.
Okay.
But I'll throw in a few of my recent writings, and I think that will be it for my community education.
We'll see. We'll perhaps talk to you once you release that book. Well, then, You've taken your precious time out this evening to come on SSTP. For that, I'm forever grateful to you. Um, to your wife and the grandkids at home, a very, very Merry Christmas. All the very best for tomorrow. And you have come on SSTP, what, 3, 4 times now? I've lost count. And each time your contribution has just been absolutely magic. And I thank you most sincerely on behalf of all my viewers. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you, Sashi, for giving me the opportunity. I mean, let's face it, we do these things because we love Fiji so much, right? As they say, you can go out of Fiji, but you
Mm.
can't take Fiji out of some people. So here we are. I'm in Melbourne, you're in Sydney, and you are doing stuff that nobody in Fiji is doing. So, well, I get a great sense of satisfaction at having done all these things and, leave a good sort of record behind, that young academics and other people can look at and say, hey, okay, maybe let's try and do something like that because that old bugger is moving on.
All right. So, once again, look, thank you very much. A very Merry Christmas and a happy, happy New Year to you as well.
Well, thank you. I think everybody in Fiji and those of us who are abroad, we have been given a fantastic Christmas present by Ramuka and Biman Prasad and Bill Gavoka. And may I wish those three leaders, and all their colleagues, a good Christmas, peaceful Christmas, and a peaceful New Year. Thank you,
Thank you,
Sashi.
Wadan. Thank you very much. God bless. Bye bye now.
Thanks.
And, well, as far as my second guest, I believe my second guest has not been able to come out of the party my guest was in. And not to be blamed, and let the party continue, as they say. Well, to you, my viewers, thank you very, very much for all your support throughout our year. I guess we started on November the 21st. We started on November the 21st, 2021. And today is the 51st episode of SSTP. It wouldn't be possible without you. So I say sincerely thank you very much. To all my past guests, thank you. To my colleague, Nikhil Singh, thank you very much. He's been watching this evening. A sterling effort on your part, Nikhil, each week. And I sincerely appreciate that. Well, I believe not enough time to wait for the guest. I am in a bit of a celebratory mood myself. My voice is going, and tomorrow's Christmas. So, from SSTP, let me say to you that may the Christmas season bring you only happiness and joy to you and your family. And may all that is beautiful, all that is meaningful, bring you, as I said, joy. Let the holiday season and throughout the coming year be one that is safe, rewarding, joyous, and prosperous for you. Merry Christmas, one and all, and wishing you all a very happy 2023. Happy New Year for next weekend. And SSTP will be back, fingers crossed, hopefully sometime in the new year. I believe we all deserve a break, and my family certainly does. And I wish you and your family have a wonderful break as well. So, from the SSTP team, I say to you goodbye, namaste, and nisamode. Goodbye, world. Thank you very much for your viewership. Appreciate it as always. Bye now. Cheers, and Merry Christmas and Happy New Year. As I said, Merry Christmas and Happy New Year. Cheers.